So what is the calling of you? What is the calling of God on your life? You'll know it. If you walk away from it, there's danger. And we see the same thing in Numbers 16 when Korah, cousin to Moses, said, who you think you are? We're just as anointed as you, Moses. God intervened and the earth swallowed Korah and his company. But now something happened. Something I told you I wanted to discuss with you today. Turn to Numbers 16 now. And I'm showing you here, and there's much more in the scriptures on this, but I'm showing you here how to protect the anointing. The first thing and most important thing of all, do not leave your calling. Find it and live in it. Let it be your address for life. Now here in Numbers 16, we find this most remarkable event. Now Korah, the son of Izar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, and Dathan, and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Peleth, sons of Reuben, took men. Now, Korah was a Levite. And from the genealogies, which I won't have to go through, we see he is cousin to Moses, and you can find this in Exodus chapter 6, verse 16, 18, and 21. Exodus chapter 6, verse 16, 18, and 21, where Korah was his cousin. There we see the genealogy of the family. It says, they arose up before Moses with certain of the children of Israel, 250 princes of the assembly, famous in the congregation, men of renown. Moses was not faced with a group of nobodies. The ones who came against him were men of renown. Princes, they're called. They gathered themselves, verse 3 says, they gathered themselves together against Moses and against Aaron, and said unto them, ye take too much upon you, seeing all the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Wherefore then lift ye up yourselves above the congregation of the Lord. They said, who you think you are? You're lifting yourself up above the congregation? And when Moses heard it, he fell upon his face. Now later, Moses says in verse 9, and this is a key. Look at verse 9. Now let me read verse 8 too, so you'll see the full picture. And Moses said unto Korah, hear I pray you, ye sons of Levi, seemeth it but a small thing unto you, that the God of Israel hath separated you from the congregation of Israel, to bring you near to himself, to do the service of the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister unto him? He said, well, wait a minute. He said, do you think it's a small thing for you to be who you are? God has honored you by letting you minister inside his tabernacle. Don't take lightly what God has given you. Don't despise your position. You take it lightly that God has called you to be ministers inside his tabernacle? Oh, how often I've seen it where people despise their ministry. They want a bigger ministry. They want to be somebody else. It's a dangerous thing. Verse 13. Is it a small thing that thou hast brought? Now, let me just read verse 10 and on. And he hath brought thee near to him, and all thy brethren, the sons of Levi, with thee, and seek ye the priesthood also? He said, you want more, while you're not satisfied with what you have? For which cause both thou and all thy company are gathered together against the Lord. And what is Aaron, that ye murmur against him? And Moses sent to call Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, which said, we will not come up. They were rebellious. Is it a small thing that thou hast brought us up out of a land that floweth with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness? They began to complain. They said, well, look what you've done to us, Moses. You brought us here to die. Except thou makest thyself altogether a prince over us. They said, you're making yourself a prince over us. Now look at this accusation they make. Moreover, verse 14, thou hast not brought us into a land that flows with milk and honey, or given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards. Wilt thou put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up. You promised to take us to a land of milk and honey. You've not done it, man of God. They begin to accuse him, calling him a liar. It's a dangerous thing. I've had staff members do that to me. They were leaving their office. They were leaving the place God called them to be in, and accused the servant of the Lord, like Moses was, of not serving God properly. Those people today not only are out of the ministry, they're out of the faith. They've gone back into the world. And Moses was very wroth, said unto them, respect not thou their offering. He's praying, of course. He says, Lord, don't respect their offering. I have not taken one donkey from them, neither have I hurt one of them. Wow. Now gathered, in verse 19 it says that Korah gathered all the congregation. Korah gathered all the congregation against them unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. But watch verse 21. This is key. And the Lord spake unto Moses, verse 20 says, and unto Aaron, saying, separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. And look at verse 26. Moses now warns their friends. He said, depart, I pray you, from the tents of these wicked men, and touch nothing of theirs, lest ye be consumed in all their sins. That's frightening. So, do you want to protect the anointing on your life? Then stay in your office and don't support anyone who's leaving his. Because he said, right there, read it again. He said, don't you support these people. Verse 26, and he spake unto the congregation, saying, depart, I pray you, from the tents of these wicked men, and touch nothing of theirs, lest ye be consumed in all their sins. So somebody who says, I'm leaving the ministry, or I want another, or I'm moving whatever, and they're forcing it upon the Lord. If you support them, you share in their fault in the sight of God. You ought to encourage them, stay in your calling. Don't walk away from it. It's a dangerous thing. Now, sometimes people say, well, it's a good idea. Why should it harm the work of the Lord? Like David in 2 Samuel 7, verse 1, 2, and 3 said, I'm going to build God a temple. And Nathan, the prophet, who had not heard God's voice at that moment, said, yeah, do what's in your heart. The Lord now comes to David later in verse 12 and 13 and says, no, you will not build the temple. There's much blood on your hands. I want your son to build it. And David obeyed the Lord and saved himself from disaster. So a good idea does not mean God is in it. Now, this anointing that must be protected, and I showed you a number of things earlier about how it increases. But you also need to see the opposite will decrease it. So you have it in your notes. You can go over that later. But what increases the anointing protects it. So keep protecting it by doing the right things. Now, the anointing of God, remember, is on you. As a Christian, you are anointed. Because in 2 Corinthians 1, turn with me.